Hi, I'm Betsy Barbieux, and this is CAM Matters. Come join us today as we talk with Cathi Sleight from Vote HOA Now on the topic of electronic voting. Yes, in Florida, we do allow electronic voting, and I'm not sure that people are ready to get rid of their paper, but if you are, Cathi can talk with you about part of the process of how to get started with the electronic voting and perhaps getting more participants in your meetings. Come join us.
Welcome to CAM Matters, Condos, Co-ops, HOAs, and beyond. Betsy Barbieux is an informational leader in Florida on community association living, rights, and obligations. She is an expert on the rights and obligations of owners as well as the association. If you live or are planning to live in the state of Florida, there's a good chance you'll be part of a community association. And by the end of this show, you'll know a little bit more about community associations and why they matter.
Hi, welcome to this edition of CAM Matters. I'm Suzanne Lynn with Betsy Barbieux and Cathi Sleight. This is going to be a very exciting episode and very important as we move into the world of technology as it keeps going and we need to keep up with it. We're going to be talking to Cathi and Betsy about online voting and keeping things legitimate and making them easier. Betsy, it's good to have you today. And if you want to introduce your guest and how you met, I think that's really interesting.
This is Cathi Sleight from Vote HOA Now. And we met at our CAI Central Florida chapter meeting back in April. She came and did a program for us on electronic voting, which is now permitted in Florida. And I thought that it would be nice to have her on the show and let her introduce herself and her services. We have the option now of electronic voting, and a lot of the attorneys who specialize in condominium and HOA law will provide that as part of their services. But I wanted all of my colleagues to know that there is another option, and Vote HOA Now seemed to be a nice option, and I thought I would invite Cathi. So Cathi, welcome.
Welcome. We're glad you're here.
Thank you, Suzanne. Thank you.
Cathi, why don't you share a little bit about your organization and how you're helping benefit? Mm-hmm.
Right. So we exclusively do online voting for community associations, whether you're a condo, an HOA, a co-op, or a timeshare, anything that really is governed by a set of governing documents. We consider ourselves the experts in online voting, and that is the reason why, as we exclusively serve this industry. All of our team are all educated business partners, have taken their M100, and even some of us, of course, have carried our CMCAs for years. So we consider ourselves the most educated online voting company. And we also have classes that are approved through the Florida DBPR. And you'll oftentimes see us at educational events giving our class.
Okay, so I don't know what all those initials mean because I'm a layperson, but I will say that it sounds very official because when you start talking about online elections and voting, you get nervous. Fraud, there's too much that can go wrong. So when you hear all these qualifications, you're like, with each letter, I'm feeling more and more comfortable that it's legitimate,
I have some of those too.
You do, I know. Yeah. So how do you approach the subject of online? I don't know. I like it the old-fashioned way. It just feels safer. It feels a little more legitimate. How do you first take care of those concerns?
Yeah, it's really, a community sits down and they plan out their whole entire year. And one of the things that they always want to do, in my experience, is increase participation. Mm-hmm. They want to give the owners another opportunity to participate, to view information. And nowadays, we are getting our information virtually all the time. Everything, online voting, virtual meetings, anything that you're doing on your computer where an owner can sit in the comfort of their own home or their office or even their car or be on vacation and be able to view community association information, maybe watch a video, you submit their ballot electronically without even walking to their mailbox. So it really is just a choice that board is going to make, saying, gosh, it's time that we moved into the electronic world and started using some technology that really is proving to be efficient and to help associations meet quorum, really.
The legislators changed the law or added to the law. I'm not sure how many years ago, maybe 6 or 7 or 8 years ago. 15, that allows electronic voting as another option. So some communities will offer both the paper limited proxies for the voting or the ballots for the elections. They'll offer the paper, but they'll also offer the online voting as an alternative. And we have so many owners that live out of state, out of country, especially for timeshare, where those owners live worldwide. So it's a great option for the electronic voting.
Well, I imagine with needing to have quorums and elections and things like that, I mean, if you've got a large community, trying to get the majority there is going to be very difficult. So, what have you seen? Yeah.
For for condo and co-op communities, unless their documents have been amended to require a lower percentage, the quorum requirement to even call the meeting to order, to just, rap the gavel and say this meeting shall come to order, they have to have 51% of the owners present in person or by proxy. So can you imagine if you had a 3,000 unit association, if your documents don't call for something less for the quorum, you have to have 1,501 people there in person or by proxy to even call the meeting to order to vote on a material alteration or to vote on an amendment to your document.
Like a paint color or things like that you really just don't have to show up in person yes, I approve it. It's okay,
Right.
And prior to electronic voting, our owners or our board members were running all over trying to get owners to sign a proxy so they could meet quorum. And oftentimes you had to adjourn the meeting and then come back to it when you're able to gather all of those proxies. And now, we're sending an invitation to vote, every 2 to 3 days. So the opportunity to reach quorum is much higher.
And Betsy, you had said, go ahead.
I was just going to say, yes, I have been known to send board members to recess a meeting while board members go run around the neighborhood and knock on doors and get more proxies and come back. And then we resume the meeting when we have enough proxies to call it to order. So yes, hopefully this will increase the number of participants.
Yeah, it certainly seems like a more efficient way of doing things than having people run. I have to smile that you had to send them out during the meeting. I mean,
yeah, I have done that.
Yeah. So you had sent a long, big list of statutes. Would you begin to dive into some of those, what it means and the significance?
Well, the list here, it requires the association that if they're going to provide the electronic methods, that they have to ensure secrecy. And as I go along, Cathi can address these in a minute here. They have to ensure secrecy. So I think, Suzanne, one of your first comments was, fraud or somehow to cheat.
The legitimacy,
in the legitimacy of it. But so there's a secure feature that protects the integrity of the ballot. The system is able to identify the person, the identity of the person who's voting. They are able to authenticate that person.
Oh, wow.
There's a receipt for the ballot once it's cast, or the proxy once it's cast. And then there's a collection and counting feature. And then all records have to be accessible to the unit owners on a request to access records. So these electronic records also have to be made available on a request for access. So Cathi, at that point, you want to address some of these things about authenticating the identity of the owner, secrecy, access to them, how are they counted, who counts them, besides, I guess, the computer. I don't. I'll
What could possibly go wrong, right?
Yes.
or AI or something.
Right.
Well, first of all, of course, we ask for all of the owner and the community information in an Excel spreadsheet. We assign each lot or unit a unique registration code. And that, along with their registration, when they come into the system, they click on the link to invite to vote, they will register. So we'll know who in the household is voting, what the registration code is that they're using. And then, of course, they would go on to make their ballot selections. Now, those are the two pieces really that are the authentication: the unique email address, the primary voting individual, and the person who's registering along with that registration code. Okay. Of course, they make their selections on the ballot, they move forward, and once they confirm all of their selections and submit, they do receive a receipt of exactly how they voted. And this can be the most important piece of information if an owner were to come to the manager and say, gosh, I have a question about my electronic vote. Professionally, the manager would say, please let us see your online voting receipt, and then we'll confirm that information with the online voting company. So it becomes a really professional process.
Wow. We're going to take a break, but let's come back. We've got a lot more to cover. The second half may be bigger and more full than the first half, but we're going to come back, talk about the statutes and more on CAM Matters. Hang in there.
Are you ready for a new career? Do you have skills or interest in management, real estate, construction, maintenance, accounting, strategic planning, project management, budgets, human resource management, lawn and landscaping, pool services, or any other expertise needed to operate a community association? If you do, community association management could be for you. For more information, feel free to email Betsy at betsy@floridacamschools.com or visit the Florida Cam Schools website at www.floridacamschools.com. Florida Community Association Management continues to grow. Career opportunities abound.
And welcome back to CAM Matters. We're just talking with Cathi Sleight about HOA online voting. And we were talking with Betsy also about the statutes that are very important. So let's go ahead and pick up where we were with that.
One of the other things before they can implement the online voting, the board has to authorize it by a board resolution done at a properly posted meeting of the board. It says the board resolution must provide that unit owners receive notice of the opportunity to vote through an online voting system, must establish reasonable procedures and deadlines for unit owners to consent in writing to online voting, and must establish reasonable procedures and deadlines for unit owners to opt out of online voting. And then we know that the written notification of the meetings in Florida is always 14-day written notice with a posted agenda on for membership meetings. And then again, it talks about the owner being able to opt out of the online voting. So it looks like the board of directors has to authorize the addition of online voting along with the regular paper voting. Cathi, would that be about right?
It is correct, Betsy. Yes. So we always recommend that the board create a resolution that outlines the process for electronic voting, the steps, the notification periods, and other information, that might be important to them to put into that resolution. And then, of course, they must approve it at a board meeting and provide it to the owners.
Now, is that resolution something that you help them create, or do you have a template?
We have a template on our resources section, along with other important, postcards and notices and candidate forms. And Betsy, you mentioned the opt-in, opt-out requirement in the Florida state statute. And that is one of the things that is the biggest hurdle to get across, because it says you must opt in writing. And I just want to say that these days, in writing, of course, is electronically. And ask your e-voting, provider if they understand that Florida state statute, because it can be done electronically. And typically, right when the vote starts, you ask them, "Do you want to vote electronically, or do you say no?" So we ask them a yes or no question right there in the first email.
Okay. Yeah.
Very good. Yeah, go ahead, Betsy.
I was just going to say that, and that's one of the areas that the statutes don't quite clarify anywhere in the statute, not just with the electronic voting, but when it says written consent, is written paper and pen, or is written an email, or is it an electronic acknowledgement? So boards can create a policy for what written means to them.
But it needs to be established, so it's understood up front.
There still has to be some kind of consent that they want to vote online.
Right.
And I'm sure Cathi has all of that set up without any
Yes,
hitch.
we do. And we also say, at the same time, ask them if they'd like to receive any future notices from the association electronically, because you have to be invested in the transition from paper to electronic, understanding that, paper is still a perfectly fine, acceptable way of voting. And some owners will call in and still ask for a paper ballot or ask for a paper proxy, and they can still turn those in. But it certainly cuts down on the amount of paper that you would be mailing out or receiving back at the office.
Cathi, that's a really good point. I mean, when we're talking about Florida communities, there's a lot of older people. I think a lot of times they're just intimidated by the word online, So it's nice to have that option of both to,
But there are a lot of people that are older who are very savvy online, and I'm finding some of it is the younger people. They don't want to do it.
Right?
Yeah. So it's easy to classify, stereotype, but some of the senior adults that I know, they're just as savvy on the
They're running
computer.
circles around the young ones, huh? Well, that's good to hear.
You can't keep up with them.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, it makes their world huge.
Sure.
If they learn how to use technology, their world then is endless. Even if they're homebound, their world is endless. So, but what I'm interested in too, Cathi, is the collection of the votes, and then how are those stored, and then how are they transmitted back to the manager or the management company?
Mm-hmm. So it is, once the owner receives their invitation to vote and they follow the steps to make their selections and submit their ballot, that information is immediately compiled on an Excel spreadsheet on the back end of our system, of course. And in that report, it provides the day they voted, the time they voted, the IP address they voted from, and any other information that was collected during the registration process or the voting process can be on that final report. So a lot of information, and then of course that generates the receipt back to them.
Okay.
So they'll have that for their records.
The limited proxy voting is not secret. Limited proxy voting is not a secret ballot, but the election balloting is secret. So how do you identify that an owner voted for an election with a secret ballot? Are they given a number? An identification code?
Every vote is tied. Yeah, every vote is tied to that registration code that I talked about.
Okay.
And in the system, we would set the vote to secret or not secret.
Okay.
And that will let's see, how can I say it? Once the vote is set to secret, that means that no one, not even us, can see how any one lot or unit voted, only that they have submitted their ballot. Yes, so that's when I said that receipt that they receive becomes very important if they have questions. They are the only ones. And then even continuing on, if after the vote an owner wants to view that report. Of course, we would recommend the community speak with their association's legal representative and determine what information should be on that viewing report, and we would customize that report for them to view.
Okay.
Cathi, can we talk about the different levels? Because I imagine the different communities are going to need varying needs for
help,
yeah.
degrees of help,
Yeah, degrees of help.
help.
Right. And we always say there's two sets of service levels. One of them is the full service setup and management. And that just means that simply your board members, your committee members, your managers are not involved in the election setup process. They're providing the initial information, the owner data, and they're providing the ballot information. And we always say, don't forget to include your meeting minutes or anything else that you vote on at the annual meeting that can also be added to the ballot and vote on electronically. So in a first full service setup and management situation, your vendor is going to take care of all of that for you. And that really is protecting them from making sure they're following the Florida state statutes and the requirements in it. There are a lot of things that we never talk about, like the candidates must be in alphabetical order.
Yes.
They cannot say they're an incumbent. There's other information that needs to be looked at. Do we have multiple lot owners? Are we going to send them 5 invitations to vote? Or are we going to combine all of their lots or units onto one ballot? So a lot of really specialized things go into full service setup and management. And if you haven't done voting before, that's what you should start with. I always say that pick a system that can follow the community and stay with them and still provide the same great service. Now, that's full service setup and management. And then there is a self-service. And we find some voting vendors that offer a system where you can set up your own ballot. You load all your own owner data information, or it's attached to a property management software. And those have a lot more risk just because it takes a lot of time to understand what the requirements are in the state statute. And you have to make sure that you're following all of them. And some of those things can get overlooked when board members or community committees are setting up those votes and ballots. So you want to make sure, and, we're always thinking at the end, if we have to go to court, who's going to talk about the process that we followed? And, is it according to the Florida state statutes? And it would be very difficult to go back and find that person because they were elected off the board a few years ago to talk about the process they followed when they set up that election.
Right. Well, we're kind of starting to wrap up a little bit, but I don't want to leave before we talk about some of the vendors and some expectations as well.
Yes. So there are a lot of online voting vendors out there, and, they all have a service that they offer. I feel like it's more the people that you want to have involved in the vote, and you definitely want to have a vendor that you know and trust, and you want to ask what they're going to do with your information. What are they going to do with your emails when you're providing all that sensitive owner information? It should be considered the property of the association, and it cannot be used for any other purpose besides that vote that you're running right then. So I always say it's okay to ask what that vendor is going to do with that email information from your owners. Oftentimes it can be used for other purposes. And those free programs are free for a reason. So you can capture email addresses of people you might not have already.
Right. Yeah, you don't want the owner's emails shared or sold to any other third parties. So you would want a reputable vendor, electronic voting vendor, to make sure that doesn't happen.
Very good. Betsy, I'm going to give you the last thought here as we talk about online voting and what Cathy's doing.
Well, I think it's a great service. I do know that there are communities that are kind of split half and half. Some of their owners will do the online voting, and then others are still stuck with paper. I think that we're a generation away. Another generation will have to depart the earth before we'll be totally electronic. But I think it's great. It was progressive for the legislators to implement it and to allow it. It seems that often we're behind the times in technology as far as the legislators go. But this was progressive and I think ahead of its time. And I appreciate companies like Cathy's that can offer those services. And she came to Florida to talk with us about it, and I think she was here this week and flew home again. So, so thank you, Cathi, so much.
Cathi, and we are so glad. And we've never done anything in this kind of world of information for online voting and stuff. How can people get a hold of you? If there's a community interested in reaching out, what's the best way?
Yeah, they can send us an email at info@votehoanow.com, and that goes to the entire sales team, so you can get the fastest response. Because as Betsy said, I'm out traveling, jumping all over, doing luncheons, teaching my class, but I still am a great resource to you, and so is my team. We always say that our whole process and everyone who works here, this is a system made for managers by managers that have had those experiences before and understand how important it is to have our managers only out one night a week and not attending it, can reconvene meetings. And the potential of reaching quorum and being successful is definitely much higher with electronic voting.
It is.
Right.
It is.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate Betsy and Cathi both being here.
Thank you, Cathi.
And Cathi from Vote HOA Now, we really appreciate it. We would love for you to review whatever platform you're on. Let us know that you're listening or you're watching this. Maybe it's YouTube. If you could give us a rating, that really means a lot. And most importantly, we want you to share this information with someone in the community that you are dealing with. Let them know about Betsy. Let them know about this many seasons of educational videos that she has available. So until next time, we thank you for joining us for CAM Matters.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to CAM Matters. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. For more information, feel free to email Betsy at betsy@floridacamschools.com or visit the Florida Cam Schools website at www.floridacamschools.com. Information provided on this show is general in nature and does not constitute legal advice. Please contact a licensed attorney for your specific situation.